Hey, we'll go ahead and end it off tonight with a look back at a weekend of college football. Of course, the big story was number 1 Clemson taking the L in double overtime to number 4 Notre Dame on the road. The world's largest outdoor cocktail party saw Florida finally shake the slump to Georgia, winning that one 44-28 and taking the driver's seat for the SEC East. Michigan continued their slide, slipping out of the top 25 with a loss to number 13 Indiana. And the Pac-12's return commenced with number 12 Oregon starting off right with the win over Stanford. So, Drink, how'd the weekend look to you overall?
Well, it looked okay. My boys didn't play, so that always bring a little cloudy, Saturday, and now we won't play for another week. So I'm really gonna be somewhere crying.
My boys home. Never play,
look,
so I don't feel bad.
I don't think any of our team, none of our teams played, did they? Wow.
Oh yeah,
cool.
Yeah. Well, mine. Oh, anyway.
Oh, did Florida State play?
I don't think our team.
They were on a field Saturday. If that's what you're asking. That's the extent of it.
Did Pitt wipe them out?
Maybe.
We've already – my God. I literally didn't plan on going to Florida State. It's totally unplanned. I apologize. Go ahead, Drink.
So, I guess I'll start with Friday's action, right? I seen that the U was back to beating NC State by a field goal, so whatever that's worth.
Derek King had a game. He had a game.
Yeah, that was cute against NC State. He should have had a game.
535 yards.
Listen, that's cool. You should have performed like that against Clemson. Then we might be talking about you a little bit more, just a tad bit more. NC State, that ain't going to get you on the front page of any sports news unless you're in Miami. But another team I did see on Friday night that I thought was impressive was BYU. Listen, this goes back to the conversation that we was having about, a mid-major Group of 5 team getting into the playoffs. Let me tell you something. If you want to get into the playoffs as a Group of 5 team, this is how you do it. Listen, I'm not saying Boise State was some, barn burner, but Boise State wasn't, a welcome mat either. And by the time BYU got done with them, we probably won't hear from Boise State again this year. BYU, let me tell you something. That kid, that quarterback, that Wilson, hey, let me tell you, he is making some money for himself in the draft, and the BYU is making money for themselves as far as the CFP go. So I would definitely want to give them a shout out. Let's move on down to the Big Ten. Mr. Young Cactus himself, Jim Harbaugh. Hey, if you listen to Jim, I think your time might be coming up short at Michigan. Also, he might want to think about, taking some time off. Go ahead, do what you got to do. Take some time off, reassess the situation, and then you might maybe go back to the NFL or whatever you want to do. This Michigan thing ain't working out for him. It ain't a way you can slice it to make me think. I got it. Michigan fans was going through so much hell before he got there that he's such an improvement. Nah. I'm sorry, getting waxed by Indiana, losing to Michigan State. They also got themselves waxed by Iowa. What are we doing here? That ain't it. Pac-12 came back in action. Jay's favorite conference. They came back in action today over the weekend. It was action-packed. Oh, look at this, Arizona State. Listen, I know we like to poke fun at Arizona State, but I'll tell you, Arizona State, they seem to be legitimate. They lost to USC, but I like the trajectory of Arizona State. I think Herm Edwards is doing a fantastic job down there. He really turned that franchise around because I was never talking about Arizona State before he got there. Never. And I mean never talking about Arizona State. Now I find myself more and more caught up with what they're doing, even though I think this is still Oregon leads to lose. But Arizona State, I give them kudos. We was talking about the Big 12, Oklahoma State. Might be the representation for that conference, or should have been the representation. Beating Kansas State by 2, that ain't going to get it. No, that ain't it. Then Iowa State was the team that we brought up, beating Baylor by 7 points. Nah, that ain't going to get it either. So you got Iowa State. Not Iowa State. You got Ohio State, and they warm up against Rutgers, that powerhouse Rutgers over there. We see how that turned out. I guess I don't need to beat that. Oregon brought them up. That was the primetime game on ABC, Oregon versus Stanford. Why the hell it was the primetime game, I don't know. But it was the primetime game on ABC. Kirk Herbstreit and Fowler probably had a riveting time calling that one. It was so action-packed. Like, man, I should start scheduling some of these games. And then let's talk about the one that we all came here for, Clemson and Notre Dame. We seen that one. It's a lot of ways we can go with that game, I think. Listen, for me, I'm not going to use if Trevor Lawrence was there, this game would have had a different result. Listen, I think we're missing the big picture here. Clemson is not as talented as they once was. The bigger picture is Clemson is coming back to the pack closer than what people thinking. We so used to Clemson coming out here dog walking the conference because the rest of the conference looks so bad. We got to come to a realization when we talk about the ACC now. It's either Clemson is coming to the pack or the pack is coming to Clemson. I'm sorry. I done watched the ACC this year. I'm out on the ladder. I don't think the pack is coming to Clemson. I think Clemson is coming back to the pack. Notre Dame beat them. Bravo. Hey, Brian Kelly, wonderful win. You know, being the number one team in the country, you won't do it again. You won't do it twice. Because I think by the time you meet them again, that defense will play better. I blame this loss on the defense. I was not overly impressed with the way the defense handled this game. I thought the offense played well, even though that was more of a one-trick pony. If it ain't Travis Etienne really making it cook, you know what I'm saying? Their offense is not as explosive as it once was, but it still can get the job done, if that makes sense. But they just can't. When T. Higgins and Justin Ross and Trevor Lawrence and Ray McLeod and Travis Etienne, like, they used to be like, boom, 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 boom. They didn't slow it down. We got some mileage on this car. We can't drive it like we once did off the lot. We got to slow it down a little bit, you know what I'm saying, or a little expensive out here. You got the defense that used to have one of the most dominant defensive lines ever in college football. It's not as dominant no more. They still got stars. I like Brazil. I like Murphy. I like some of the guys they got up there. But, you know what I'm saying, they ain't no Wilkinson and they ain't no Lawrence and they ain't, those guys. But they serviceable. Like, that defensive line going to beat most teams. I just think, listen, we have to look at this and say, listen, Clemson is not as good as they once was. But they're not, chopped liver either. They still can play this game at a high level. But we see chinks in the armor, and that's where Notre Dame come in. Listen, first of all, you know me. I think Notre Dame, I told you what I thought of Notre Dame. They're out here catfishing people. You know what it is. It's been one of the most overhyped teams behind Florida State in years. But the thing is this, like, Book, he was okay. But, like, the run game, like, I thought everything that Notre Dame did offensively was just okay. It was okay to win. I thought their defense stepped up in a big way to make the game winnable. But I just wanted to make it clear that I don't think Clemson would have just won just because Trevor Lawrence was playing. I think they would have had to play better defense, and Trevor Lawrence would have had to been playing. Then maybe you got a different result. That's just my 2 cents on it. But congratulations to Notre Dame. You finally won a game that you wasn't supposed to win. You know what I'm saying? I'm happy for you. If you make the playoffs, I hope we get you. We're going to run right through you. That's what it is. So, holla at your boy. Over to you, Jay.
Let's start off with the absolute big picture of the TV networks in what was Pac-12 Appreciation Week. That's what it was. I mean, Drink brings up, what was it, ABC, Chris Fowler, Kirk Herbstreit, having the distinguished pleasure of calling Oregon and Stanford. So that was cool. Also Fox's Big Noon, they did something with Arizona State and Southern California. So I don't know what that was. I don't know. Everybody gets a trophy and you get the, you finally decided to play. Come on, we put you on prime time and noon time.
That was a 9 a.m. kickoff for them.
It was. It's 9 a.m. Yeah, that's a tough ask. I mean, you can't even get up by 9 o'clock on most days. So,
oh, man.
you look at that. But back to I could care less about the Pac-12. I can't hide it. But yeah, I think Drink broke down Clemson, Notre Dame pretty good. In the big picture, though, to me, just looking at, it's all about, to me, what does this mean for the committee? Is the committee going to hold? How much is this loss by Clemson going to affect the committee? Because I'm looking at right now, to me, as of right now, I see 2 locks to the playoffs, and obviously it could change. Bama or Ohio State could obviously slip up, but those are my 2 locks right now. Other than that, I mean, it's pretty wide open. I ain't a believer in the Pac-12. I think the Big 12 has already played itself out, unless Oklahoma State could win out and maybe get in, but I don't see it. I ain't seen enough from them. And then, we already know about Clemson. They already took 1 loss. I guess you could say Notre Dame is, maybe you could call them, they're in the driver's seat in the ACC. I mean, but who's to say, that's going to last? So there's a lot of questions up in the air right now. But I mean, really, let's just say Clemson runs the table. Will that be enough? How does Clemson measure up to, one of these group of 5 teams? I brought them up last week. If there was ever a time for something crazy to happen, this would be the year to do it. I mean, Cincinnati keeps climbing on up. They were number 6 coming into this week, I believe. Not sure they'll, if they're going to be able to move up at all based on the results we just saw. But it's going to be incredibly interesting as we move on. And then you got to look, when it's all said and done, when all the games are played, when you have your conference championships, committee's going to have a time, delving, getting into the weeds on these resumes and who's, which resume beats another team, on paper, and what does the film say? What do your eyes tell you? It's because some of the records aren't going to match up. I mean, we know the Pac-12 and the Big Ten were behind. They were way behind the power curve, so they're going to have a little bit less of a resume. So, for instance, let's just say, I don't know, does an 8-0, how does an 8-0 Oregon team, for example, God forbid that happen, how does that stack up against maybe, I don't know, 10-1 Clemson or whatever they could turn out to be? What does that look like? These are the questions that I think we got to keep in the back of our mind moving forward. It's gonna those college football playoff ranking shows when the committee chairman come in and give some of them political answers where
them little copy and paste dried up answers.
I'm gonna need some substance out of these this time. There's gonna be a lot of questions to where the records versus the numbers, all these different things that they look at is gonna be incredibly interesting. But to Georgia, Florida. It just coming into that game, it just felt like, to me, it felt like Florida's time to kind of, break through in the SEC East, which they did. And Georgia, I mean, it's just, when you look at Georgia's defense is something to be respected. Time and time again, it seems like, whether it be LSU last year, whether it be Bama not too long ago, and now you look at Florida, they just having trouble with some of these elite defenses. Maybe part of it is their offense just is a little – you just get the feel they're a little bit undermanned, or they're at least under quarterback. I mean, I ain't never heard, you talk about Gary Danielson, what he was talking about, just saying so many nice things about Stetson Bennett. Oh, yeah, he's really trying. And then you look at the little stat line pops up. He's like 4 for 12. Well, Gary, I don't care. I don't care how much he's trying. I mean, these results are just not cutting it. So I think at some point you got to look at Georgia, put them under a microscope a little bit. I know they got hurt by I think Jamie Newman. He came over from Wake Forest. Ended up opting out. So maybe that's having an effect. You'd love to see this kid JT Daniels. I guess he's not ready to play as of yet. But I think you may want to. At some point you'd like to have a little bit better quarterback play. They don't have it right now. But keep an eye on Kirby Smart down there. We talked about it recently. I don't think you move in a different direction, but at some point you have to break through. And what we've been able to say for Kirby Smart in Georgia since he's been there is they pretty much been running their side of the conference. The problem is they're having trouble breaking through against typically Alabama and last year LSU. But now if you start struggling against your own division, now I think it could get a little more interesting. And that leads me to my last point. which is Michigan. I think Michigan's getting on my nerves. I got to be honest. You look at a really nice opening win against Minnesota. Then you just a mystifying performance against Michigan State, and not in a good way. And then next thing, here comes Indiana. Indiana's 13, and Indiana looked pretty good. But this is Michigan. And now you're looking at the Michigan Wolverines. You're looking at Jim Harbaugh, and it's the same thing. You can struggle against Ohio State from time to time, but now you're chronicling some of these struggles against Michigan State. They can't even beat them half the time. So that's incredibly alarming. The defense, I'm looking at Don Brown now in that defense, and it just seems like one of those situations. They just don't have the personnel to run man-to-man coverage. Michigan State's receivers were giving them all types of trouble. This Indiana quarterback, you got him throwing for a career high in passing yards. And it just leaves you kind of wondering what's going on with the Michigan Wolverines. And that Michigan State loss, to really put that in perspective, in week 1, Michigan State lost to Rutgers, the same Rutgers team that, we're looking at them and like, why are y'all even in the Big Ten? Like, could y'all go back to whatever conference y'all used to be? You're not ready for this. And then Michigan State just got blown to shreds by Iowa. So that doesn't bode well for Michigan. It seems like a common topic we talk about every year, but Michigan, I think Michigan's got to get this thing. They got to right this ship in a hurry. Or I think this might be it for Jim Harbaugh, and it definitely looks like it could be it for Don Brown.
Hold on, before you jump on that.
Yeah, go ahead.
I totally just blanked out on Florida and Georgia. I don't know what I was thinking about, but not to hold it up too long, I would say this: watching Florida and Georgia was the direct. So Nick, like a couple of weeks ago, he said, this is an offensive league now. Good defense, you're going to throw it out the window. And to your point, Cody, you said this. That's exactly what that game in a nutshell was. Offense beat good defense any day. And even though Kyle Pitts didn't even play the second half, it didn't even matter. Like, he got hurt and then he left the game. And Trask still just used the rest of the guys and tore them up. And I do still think that Georgia is a good defense. It's just, like you said, if you got to carry both sides of the ball at some point, you can only go so far. So in that game, basically, Kirby Smart, to Jay's point, Kirby Smart, if he was to lose his job here within the next year or two, all you have to do is go back and circle the fact that Justin Fields transferred from Georgia to Ohio State because Kirby was too stubborn to let him get on the field. This is the difference. When people ask me I don't understand how Alabama do it and Georgia don't do it. The difference is, look at how Nick Saban handled Tua and look at how Kirby Smart handled Justin Fields. That is the difference between success and failure of a college program. And I'm out.
That's pretty spot on. Yeah, I think I got a good look at the Florida-Georgia game, and what really impressed me was Florida, their resilience, because that game started 14-0. In a drop of a hat. I think Zamir White took a 70-something yard touchdown to the house in the first play on just a little inside zone, and then the next, Florida goes 3 and out. Georgia scores lightning quick again, and it was like Florida looked like they had been shot out of cannon, 14-0, when it was like 12 and a half minutes still on the clock in the first quarter. Then here comes Kyle Trask, here comes Kyle Pitts and the rest of the crew, and these guys just went out and they just went to work. Like, it was just, okay, well, 0-0, let's go play some ball, guys. And I think that over time that Georgia defense just couldn't really keep up. I know they were out a couple guys already going into the game. They had a guy get hurt in I think a dirt bike accident or something. A couple other guys were injured, and then they had 1 or 2 more injuries. You had the targeting call. There was a lot of injuries on both sides. It was kind of nasty. It was like 10 or 12 players went out at some point during the game. Obviously, Pitts and the other fella both got hurt on the collision, but on the targeting call. But I think that over time, I think Georgia just ran out of like the top shelf guys in the defense. And let's be honest, Florida's got one of the best offenses in the country. These guys they go out there and get it done. And Kyle Trask been part of it. And we know what Dan Mullen could always do with pretty good quarterbacks. He's always been a guy who could coach quarterbacks. And now he's got a guy in Kyle Trask who suddenly looks like a first-round draft pick. You're talking about guys shooting up the draft board. You got Zach Wilson from BYU. He was 22 of 28 for 360 and 3. And Trask, 30 of 43, 474, 4 touchdowns and 1 pick, which was the Florida school record for the most yards against Georgia in any game. I think he passed Kerwin Bell's record. And then that also was 8 yards off Tim Tebow's all-time single-game record at the school. So that was a big performance from Kyle Trask and for the Gators, because I think Dan Mullen was under an immense amount of pressure to win that game, because up until this point, you're talking about, not getting over the hump. Well, while Georgia's trying to get over the Alabama hump, Dan Mullen was trying to get over the Georgia hump. And every year he'd show up to Jacksonville and he would get beat up by Georgia, and then that was the season. Oh, well, better luck next time. Here's your consolidation prize of New Year's Six Bowl. So I think that if you look at Florida, the defense played a lot better. They really settled in the second half. Georgia's quarterbacks couldn't do anything. Stetson Bennett, DeJuan Mathis, they could do nothing. And if you're Florida, you got to feel really good about how the defense has looked the last 2 weeks. Since that break, they played well against Missouri. They played well against Georgia. Not two powerhouse offenses, but you got to think like, hey, maybe this defense isn't going to give up 600 yards every game we play. And maybe when we go play Alabama, we're going to have a good chance. But I would say Florida needs to be careful, because you do have a game against the best quarterback you're going to play the rest of the season, which is Felipe Franks. Arkansas have been a little bit of a surprise. You don't want to kind of get too high off this game and then go screw it up and lose to Arkansas or something and go right back where you were. That would be probably less good for the program. The rest of the rundown, I think a couple of things maybe y'all didn't mention. Liberty, 25 Liberty, Hugh Freeze. That man's getting a job soon. He took down Virginia Tech, and that is a 7-0 Liberty squad who's going to be in the top 20 next in this coming week, more than likely. I agree with Drink's point wholeheartedly on Clemson. I don't think Trevor Lawrence makes that a 3-touchdown game, but like Jay, you were saying, talking about the college football playoff going down the road. The ACC is in a top 2 teams no matter what division this year, so we will more than likely see Clemson and Notre Dame play again. And I think if Clemson avenges their loss to Notre Dame on a neutral field with Trevor Lawrence in a couple weeks, you kind of have to look at that as a wash. And I think that especially if you consider a double overtime loss on the road versus if you can go ahead and convincingly take care of them in the ACC championship, I think that Clemson still is in the driver's seat and controls their own destiny if you consider that the Pac-12 and the Big 12 aren't really going to be competing for those last 2 spots. And I think if Clemson avenges their only loss to a top 4 team, again, on the road, double overtime, I feel like they've still got to be a top team, right? I feel like that's kind of how it goes. But, hey, you screw around and lose the second game.
Yeah, that's a good point to bring up. Like all that, I think all that is true, especially because we don't believe in those other 2 conferences. At least I know I don't. So yeah, if you, in that context, I think you're absolutely right. Clemson, assuming they bounce back from that, you get Trevor Lawrence back, and you can go on. You get back on the horse, and you go on this run. You could be in very good shape for that 3rd spot. But you can't lose 2. I mean, we've seen that throughout the history of the college football playoff. You can't lose 2. So now you really got to be buttoned up. You can't have a slip up. You can't have a letdown. I remember we've seen some trouble here recently. You go back to that Boston College game. You get you're getting beat pretty soundly in the first half. Of course, Lawrence wasn't there for that game either. But like we say, and I think Drink is picking up on it now too, this Clemson team, they're not as good as they were last year. I don't think they are. I think that's really playing out. What it's going to come down to isn't going to matter, because I really don't think, and based on now everybody's back in playing games, and you're seeing some of these early season ACC rankings. I mean, they were mirages. That's what they were. So it may not even matter at this point, but I think it does matter come playoff time, because I think Bama and Ohio State are clearly the best 2 teams out there.
Are you telling me North Carolina wasn't actually a top 5 team and that win meant nothing to Florida State?
Well,
that's exactly what he's saying.
Right, and
I double that.
I'm so hurt right now.
Don't forget, they lost to my boys too. They lost to Virginia. So
yeah, so
I think that tells you all you need to know about North Carolina.
Let me speaking of disappointments, let me stake in one more thought here. Real quick, the Big Ten. My God, Penn State and Minnesota to go along now with Michigan. I mean, Ohio State's got to just love this. I mean, everyone else just decided they weren't going to show up. But Maryland has both those teams in common. Maryland beat both of them with Tua's younger brother, which is Taulia, I think is how you'd say it. Taulia. Yeah, and this kid in these 2 games that he beat Penn State and Minnesota after a disastrous loss to Northwestern is thrown for over 600 yards and 6 touchdowns to 1 pick. So I guess it runs in the family over there.
Built by Bama.
Is who we were thinking Maryland could be a really bad team, and they've suddenly just beat 2 of the top Big Ten teams that we thought, and they get Ohio State next week, so that'll be kind of fun, maybe.
They'll run out of gas.
Probably.